Welcome, everyone. My name is Kelly Richardson, and I am the CCIM president for 2020 and 2021. I want to welcome you to our webinar, which is about understanding proptech solutions and how that can help you embrace digital transformation to adapt in a rapidly changing world. And that's what we've got today. So we're really excited about that. I'm with Walli Properties. I'm a CCIM and have been since 2012. I'm the designated broker for Walli Properties, and welcome everyone. First, I'd like to get started and thank our annual sponsors. We have the Benaroya Company, Lisa Goodman and Larry Benaroya. Lots of industrial space, office space. IBA, Kurt Meyer. Mergers and acquisitions, great resource for you. Ameriprise, Kevin O'Keefe. He does asset management, stock market valuations, great individual. Rob Sargent. Rob recently started his own company, Sargent Legal, and he knows all things about real estate and a longtime seasoned attorney. So call Rob with Sargent Legal. And we would like to welcome Stuart Title, Kelsey Azur. So Stuart Title for all your title needs. Our annual sponsors are McConkey Development, Fred McConkey, Walli Properties, myself, Kelly Richardson, Dirtfish, which is out in Snoqualmie. They are a rally car racing school, Mally Schaefer, Great Earth Realty, Larry Yu. Larry is our 2022 board president for CCIM Washington State chapter. Our media partner sponsors are the Registry and the Daily Journal of Commerce. And our in-kind sponsor is BDP Design, Kelly Beckley. She helps us with all things marketing. So thank you so much to our sponsors. They are a huge value and an asset, and please call on them for your needs. The Institute is now offering the CI 101 through 104 classes in an online condensed format. Please visit our chapter website for more information, which is CCIM-WA.com. And then next month, on November 11th, our webinar is a regional economic update with Steve Scranton from Washington Trust Bank. Please check our calendar for updates and information and to register for this event. And that's CCIM-WA.com. And also we'll have updates on classes and events as we move forward into 2021, 2022. All right, we have some housekeeping items here. As you can see, to minimize external noise, all attendees are muted. However, we highly encourage questions and comments. If you have questions, please submit them in the Q&A forum and not in the chat window. In the Q&A forum, you'll also be able to upvote questions. Upvoting will help us prioritize your questions. If you're having technical difficulties during the webinar, try logging out of the webinar and then logging back in. And if there's any other issues, call 1-888-799-9666, extension 2 for Zoom tech support. So we're recording the webinar and it will be available on demand on our CCIM-WA.com website later this week. With that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to be covering today and then introduce our speakers. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic has upended the traditional norms of how commercial real estate professionals work. It is increasingly clear that in order to adapt and win in the new normal, CRE professionals must consider transforming their work to a digital framework. This session will explore how digital tools will help brokers and other CRE stakeholders chart a path forward using technology and offer insights and recommendations for future-proofing your business. The goal of the session is to provoke thoughts on how to modernize your business to win in a rapidly changing marketplace. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Matt Giffune is co-founder of Occupier, a real estate success software platform that enables tenants and tenant representation brokers to organize their leasing data and workflow to drive better decision-making. Prior to Occupier, Matt spent 4 years in sales at VTS, a leasing and asset management software platform for landlords. And prior to that, he spent 10 years as a commercial real estate broker at JLL in Boston. Welcome, Matt. Aaron Letzeiser is the co-founder and COO of Obie, a tech-enabled insurance and risk management platform for real estate investors. A serial entrepreneur and apartment investor, Aaron has several years of experience in the real estate and insurance space. He's a graduate of Michigan State University and was named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Welcome, Aaron. Obie Walli is the co-founder of Dealius, a real estate software company that provides a centralized transaction and back office management platform to CRE brokerages. With over 20 years of experience in the commercial real estate industry and mergers and acquisitions, Obie has served various roles in CRE and finance industries. Most recently, he built a multi-market commercial real estate brokerage company that was sold in 2016. Obie started his career in investment banking and transitioned into commercial real estate 20 years ago. Over his career, he has underwritten over 200 real estate mergers and acquisition transactions and completed over 60 acquisitions totaling $900 million in value. Welcome, panelists. It's great to have you here today. So proptech solutions are at the forefront of innovation, but today's world has accelerated their relevance. So we're going to explore how to employ these specific solutions to compete and win. So Matt, I'm going to turn the questions over to you, and Aaron, have you and Obie chime in as relevant. Matt, what problems do your companies solve?
Sure, thanks for having us, Kelly. Really appreciate it, and hi everybody in the audience out there. So Occupier was founded on the belief that occupiers, tenants, and their tenant representation brokers needed better software to collaborate and make decisions for their leasing. So we combine transaction management software, lease administration and lease accounting, as well as a broker module that helps tenant rep brokers and tenants essentially centralize all the stakeholders and workflow that are required to make decisions in a real estate portfolio. Those decisions could be lease related for transactions. So how do you renew a lease? What are the steps you need to go through for a transaction management process? How do you then stay on top of existing lease information so that you're not missing critical dates, wasting time, costing the company money? And of course, with lease accounting, how do you stay in compliance with the ever-changing FASB and IFRS accounting standards? So the market for software out there today lacks the context and collaboration that dynamic teams require in order to make these rapid and accurate decisions. So what Occupier does is centralizes all the stakeholders and workflow around the lease data so that brokers specifically can free up their time. They have better visibility into their pipeline. They can provide better service, essentially getting their piece of the pie larger as they grow their businesses and provide better client service.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Aaron and Obie?
Sure. Well, thank you, Kelly, for having us, and hello, everyone. Dealius was founded essentially to eliminate the inefficiencies within the brokerage operation. Traditionally, in my own brokerage, we had stakeholders, the individual brokers, the staff, the ownership, the principals that were all sort of essentially operating in silos, with your front end brokers focused on the transaction side. Once they took that deal to a certain stage, was ready to close, and then you had your staff members trying to gather all the paperwork and close the deals out and get commissions processed, invoices out. And then from an ownership and management perspective, you're trying to manage a business and get transparency into your operation of your pipeline, transactions in the works, your listings, lease transactions, sales transactions, everything you're working on. So we centralized everything. Dealius was created to allow the business to operate from inbox to invoice. So you could take that entire process, work seamlessly from your email, work it through Dealius, close it out, and manage that process from start to finish, and do it all within one system that's web-based, so that you don't have to physically be in the office to do what we do, because if we're in the office, we're not out there winning business. And it took all of that into consideration as part of this enterprise-based solution to drive and help the industry become more efficient.
Excellent. Aaron.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, for having us today, and thank you everybody for joining in. We're and as Kelly mentioned, Obie's an insurance and risk management platform for real estate investors, and really the way that we've grown our business are really through different partners. And obviously, our big focus is on the acquisition and the disposition process, where you've gone hard on cash. You have these investors; they're moving through that acquisition process, and there's two really big barriers that exist there in order to be able to really get the process closed. And one of those obviously is insurance. Myself as an insurance broker, but also as an owner, this is not only a giant black hole, but it's something that normally takes about 10 to 12 business days to get from your initial request of a quote to then finally having something that you can submit out to the lender and hopefully get that process closed without delay. And so really our company is based around an entirely digital process, being able to allow these folks to pull in some basic information about the asset. You're not filling out several PDFs or spreadsheets anymore. We pull all the physical property information in from different publicly available sources, and then really from there match up each risk to the different carriers, over 80 that we have on the platform, to make sure that we can streamline that process as much as possible. So instead of again that 2 or 3 week process, we usually have turnaround times in about 2 to 3 days, and then it also allows at the same time our clients to win on price, simply because we're able to always target the right type of carrier for these opportunities. So for us, again, our big partners in this are always going to be brokers in this process. We know that obviously you don't want your deal to fall through, and so our thesis here is always that the digital process and the digital world that we've all been forced into is now required that each one of the pieces to a closing have become more streamlined in that process.
Very good. I have a question from the audience from Peter. Does Dealius include or provide CRM management solutions?
Yeah, we do. We actually provide a basic CRM functionality to allow for managing contacts and relationships that you're working on, as well as task management. And our integration with Outlook also allows you to manage your contacts simultaneously, both in Outlook and Dealius.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Obie, I'm going to turn this question over to you again. Who are the stakeholders that benefit from your solution?
Sure. So, our product really has 3 key stakeholders. So our product addresses the challenges that individual brokers for themselves in managing their transaction and staying top of all their deals, their activities, contacts with prospective clients or even current clients that they're working on. And then our second group is the administrative staff, the assistants, the support team, the accounting team, to be able to have access to critical documents that are required by a DRE or your local state or council from a real estate perspective, and then allowing that to flow into the accounting side. So, and then finally, the third stakeholder is the principal, the owner, right? So you want to have transparency into your business, being able to manage all the moving parts, because as you know, everybody's working on multiple transactions, and as a business, our business has ebbs and flows. It's transactional, right? So one month is great, the second month is slow, and to be able to manage all that and have transparency is really where we start to hone in and give all the individual stakeholders, those 3 respective groups, the ability to work collectively together and not miss a beat.
Excellent. Aaron, tell us about your stakeholders.
Sure. So we really have 3 main stakeholders. Again, your typical folks that really have to do with the insurance process during an acquisition. So obviously the owner or the sponsor for that specific deal, their broker, and then also the lender. All 3 of these parties really have to come together in order to create a seamless process. You obviously have the owner that has certain requirements, the lender, as most brokers know, when you get to a couple of days before close, here's the insurance policy or the quote, and then you send that off to the lender, and suddenly Arbor or whoever it might be says, hey, this doesn't actually meet the lending requirements. And so making sure that we can consolidate all of these folks in one place throughout that process, make sure that that entire transaction really goes off without a hitch.
That's important. All right, Matt, anything to add there?
Yeah, I would categorize our stakeholders into two buckets. One is at the broker side, and the other is the tenant side. Because similar to Dealius and what Obie provide for the broker, we typically would come in during the client collaboration process on the transaction. So it's much less like CRM and deal probability closing tracking, and more of like, what are my works in progress as a tenant rep broker? So we'll provide that tenant rep broker or a brokerage team or a brokerage office with full visibility into all of the deals that are happening in their pipeline on behalf of their clients. And those could be categorized by stage, by size, by asset type, by probability of getting done, priority, or whatever. And then we provide a mechanism for that broker to invite their tenant client into the deal room, and they will collaborate from start to finish in a transaction. So as early as the beginning stages of planning the transaction, defining the requirement, head count, square footage, location analysis, through the site selection process, where we're really crunching in all of this manual work that exists today for the tenant rep broker. So if you think about it from the broker's perspective, you're probably spending 30% of your time just preparing information to deliver to your client. We provide a software framework that is much more efficient, where you can share property information, collaborate on marketing brochures, price analysis. The whole negotiation process is done within the software. So the ultimate beneficiary is the actual tenant client, who has more information at their fingertips to make rapid decisions. And then if the tenant then is bought into Occupier on their end, they can employ lease administration, which helps them stay on top of their portfolios. And then, of course, the stakeholders from the finance team get involved, or sometimes those are third-party CPAs or accountants who then close the books for lease accounting. So we're trying to be the connective tissue, if you will, for all the stakeholders within the real estate decision-making process.
It's nice to see that these assets are now available for commercial real estate practitioners. I think it's been a long time.
Agreed.
Yeah. So Aaron, let's direct this next one to you. How did you arrive at your solution, and from what perspective does your solution come from?
Great question. So, as I had mentioned, not only have I been an insurance broker that's specialized really in the real estate investment space, I've also been a multifamily investor for the last several years. And I think, unfortunately, even though we've seen a large shift in technology in the insurance space and the personal line side, right? I mean, everybody on this call today can go out and get an instant home quote or an instant auto quote. But, what was most frustrating to me as an owner, and the way that this the industry and the regulatory is set up, I can't write my own stuff. I can't benefit in that way from it. And so I am in the exact same position with other folks. And so, unfortunately, insurance is one of my largest line item expenses, but also the one that I had the least amount of control and insight over, which is super frustrating for me as an owner, because you want to be able to control those things where you can. And unfortunately, the way that the market is set up, because you have to use a broker and then go out to the carrier market, you're rushing to get something closed. You're a couple of days before close. And, at that point, you're given a couple of PDF spreadsheets or a couple of PDFs with quotes on them. And I have to make a decision, right? Because we have a closing date, they match the loan requirements. And so in order to change deductibles or change limits, I would have to go through that entire process again. And now we've delayed close. And so it was just very frustrating to me, and really to all of the other folks that were always in those acquisition processes, the broker and the lender, that insurance, unfortunately, still in this space just has not moved forward. And so that's ultimately how we got to this point, and the challenge we're looking to solve here at Obie.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else like to chat about that, their solution? What perspective did it come from?
Sure. So from our perspective at Dealius, we look at it through the lens of, I had my own brokerage business, and we had a lot of challenges and struggles. I mean, we were using Excel to manage our commissions and pipeline, and files were stored in a cabinet, closing sheets and our abstracts were all, again, Excel documents. And a lot of our brokers were keeping the Rolodex in their mind or on a piece of paper or in their Outlook. So it just was frustrating as a principal, and on the transaction side, that there wasn't anything out there that allowed us to manage our business more efficiently. And so it created a need. And when you're in the world we live in, the mother of all invention is some sort of a need or necessity, right? So we looked at it and said, how do we make this better for not just ourselves, but the community and the industry at large? Because if I'm feeling this pain, everybody else is feeling this pain in my shoes. And that was really the genesis of Dealius, is taking it through the lens of a practitioner in the business and trying to integrate technology, not by changing the way we do business, but by streamlining and making it more efficient. And I think what separates like the three of us here as all co-founders, especially in our industries, we've been in the shoes of our end users, right? So knowing your customer is so important. Whereas a technologist coming into our space that doesn't necessarily do what we do brings a different perspective and a whole different end case. So, that's part of, I think, why you might be seeing more individuals like us starting to take advances in technology, because we as practitioners see that need, and it's what's driving innovation in our space as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, look, I think, Obie hit the nail on the head there. It's not a coincidence that all three of us came from within the industries that were innovating. So, the real estate market is been pulled forward probably by like 5 years due to COVID into this virtual world, right? So the perspective that we built Occupier from was really born out of like my frustrations as a broker dealing with my clients, right? So I represented both landlords and also like global tenants with their transaction management. And in both cases, I was communicating with them like completely offline. So I had a different spreadsheet report that I had to put together for every client of mine, explaining where every deal sat and what that decision point was that they need to make in order to move things forward. And inevitably, you miss handoffs, things slip through the cracks, similar to what Aaron was describing. Dates get slipped, deals die, and at the end of the day, the broker doesn't really make money or as much money as they should because they can't handle as much work, and their clients have a poor experience, so they might look elsewhere, they might not get hired again, et cetera. So those are like the real world frustrations that I had. In my specific experience that brought me to founding Occupier was I got out of the brokerage world and got into tech about 5-6 years ago and worked at a company called BTS. And they solved such a simple problem to begin with, which was an owner of a property was receiving all of these spreadsheets from their agent, their broker, and they had no way to kind of aggregate that information to understand, well, how well is my portfolio or my building performing? So BTS essentially just created a communication layer between the agent and the owner that was real time, it was mobile, it was accurate, and it was up to date. So at any given time, the head of asset management at a REIT could log in and understand, how is my property portfolio performing? So the light bulb idea was like, well, why don't tenants have that? Why don't tenant rep brokers behave like that? And then COVID hit, and it was like, wow, now everybody has to behave like that, right? Because we're all sitting in our bedrooms, some of us have gone back to the office, but we're certainly not seeing our clients in person right now. So are there virtual tools where you could share information, where you can collaborate so that you're keeping that pulse on the relationship, but also providing the information that you need? So I think going forward, this industry will take major leaps forward in terms of kind of centralizing all of this stuff in software. So I think the unique characteristic of the three of us on this call are that we lived in the old world and we're moving into this new world.
Thank you. And Matt, would you integrate the underwriting process into your software at some point?
Underwriting for property acquisitions? Is that the specific use case?
Let me see. I've got a question from the audience from Peter that says, would you integrate the underwriting process into your software at some point? Maybe Peter, go ahead.
Well, I think I can speak to that from our perspective. So let's just use the example of a corporate tenant buying a building or something, or maybe just leasing property and needing to run the financial analysis to understand, that those decisions to either underwrite it or make a lease decision. The short answer is yes. Right now within our platform, from a leasing perspective, you can track the entire analysis of a property from start to finish during a negotiation. So essentially getting down to those metrics that you're looking for to make your decision, whether it's what's my NPV, what's my out-of-pocket cost, when do I break even on this lease? For property acquisitions, like we're not quite there yet in terms of helping an acquisition manager or a buyer of a property make those decisions, and say like an Argus or something like that, there might be an integration endpoint that we can explore in order to do that. Who knows, maybe down the road we build that native in our platform, but for now we're really focused on corporate and retail leasing transactions.
Thank you. So Matt, what specific functionality exists in your solution that would benefit clients? And can you provide a case study example of a client that benefits from your solution?
Sure. So I'll answer that question from the perspective of the broker. So we have a client in New York City. They're a tech-enabled brokerage company, which means that they use the internet to gather in leads for tenants who are looking for space. And what they benefited from Occupier on was starting to centralize the data of these tenants once they executed their leases. So within our platform, they have been able to advise a company, call it like a one-off tenant, through the leasing process, and then essentially aggregate all of their lease data into our platform, which then surfaces things that the tenant's not paying attention to. So as a broker, the last thing you want to do is get a call from your tenant who says like, hey, did we miss our termination option or our renewal option? And then you're like, oh, I was so busy doing all these other things that I actually let my client down. So for the Square Foot, who's this tech-enabled broker in New York, for example, they were able to uncover over $500,000 in security deposit reimbursements that were owed to a tenant who paid security deposits to landlords over time. And because that's something that just they wrote these checks, they weren't paying attention to it, our system alerted the broker to say, hey, you should go out and collect this money on behalf of your client. And sometimes there's some time limits on those things. So they were able to basically go to the client and say, hey, by the way, you should be receiving a $500,000 check from your landlord. And it was like this nirvana moment for the tenant. So the broker then stays more engaged. Another example would be when we're working directly with a corporate client, they will bring their broker into their transaction management workflow, and that broker gets to know our software. So when these brokers start to use Occupier for their deal management, they want to start using it for other tenants. So we had a use case with actually a Bellevue, Washington-based CBRE brokerage team got introduced to Occupier through one of our tenant clients. And they brought Occupier into a competitive pitch for a relocation of a 20,000 square foot office space, and won that piece of business because the tenant's main concern going into this process was the process itself. Like, I don't want to deal with a million emails and documents from my brokers. I want a delightful experience for this office relocation. And they actually won a piece of business just by presenting the software. So there's the risk mitigation, there's the efficiency of the deal process, but then there's the attracting and retaining clients that we can help tenant rep brokers execute as well.
That's great. Obie, any
Sure.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, so from Dealius's perspective, I think we have a couple examples. We have, and I'll give you the examples through the lens of one, the broker, and then secondly through the principal's lens, and how the product has created efficiencies and value for them each respectively. So we had a company that was looking for a solution that, and the culture of that organization was that all the brokers operate as a team. So they were collaborating on deals and making sure that they were on top of all the communications, the engagement process, opportunities that were coming in, and they were doing both leasing and sales. So for the sales transactions, they wanted to be able to track critical dates once a deal went under contract into due diligence, so they weren't missing anything important in the due diligence process. And everything was being done using separate systems and tools, right? And so what they realized is that although they were trying to work collaboratively as a team, they weren't getting the results. They were trying to chase each other on all this information. So what Dealius allowed them to do was every transaction was in one system, and every party, every individual that was in the company had transparency into that transaction. All communications, different stages of the deal, they were able to send notes back and forth. They didn't have to physically be in front of a computer to do that. They could do it from their phone. And it really streamlined their efficiency as a team, collaborating on deals and working together and sharing that information real time. and not missing critical dates, which was happening frequently when you're chasing different parts of the transaction, although you're all working together at the same time. So what that allowed that company to do was see the value through the lens of their brokers, right? And say, hey, we're better off with a centralized system. And then what it's created for them is it's streamlined a lot of their process. And it's allowed them to be more efficient in how they're executing transactions. So that's one example of how the system has created value. The second one is we had a business and a company that was looking at how do they better manage their overall enterprise. They had about 30 brokers in the company, again, full service real estate company, and they had all these different elements of transactions going on. And the ownership, which was made up of 3 or 4 partners, were also brokers as well. They're player coaches, right? So they're doing deals, they're trying to manage a business, and they're all trying to figure out, well, where are we at in our pipeline, and what are we expecting to come in the next 60, 90 days? And how are our brokers doing from a pipeline perspective? And same concept. Excel is the common theme across a lot of what we're seeing kind of, customers use today, right? It's amazing where we are now versus where we were before. But what Dealius was allowing them to do now is as principals, be able to focus on their business and do what they do really well, which is transactional, deals, but still have the transparency and the ability to manage the business at a high level by seeing everything that's going on, right? Everything at their fingertips. Whereas before, they spent so much time trying to figure out activity, pipeline, cash flow. Now they just come in, log in once, there's a dashboard, and boom, it's all there. They can focus on generating income for the business and generating profit. So that translated to them seeing the value there and allowing their business actually to grow year over year. They saw, more transactions come through the business, and their personal production went up. So that's another case study of how, depending on the stakeholder, value is being created from our product standpoint.
I think we all like having our personal production go up.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Aaron.
Yeah, so very similar to Obie, I can give 2 examples here. I think the biggest functionality that really sets Obie apart is really based in the technology on the back end. So really taking what normally would have been the day-to-day work of an insurance broker, interfacing with the real estate broker, their client, the lender, really automating as much of that process as possible. And so, I'll give you an example of an owner actually going through an acquisition process. On pro forma, they actually had it listed at around $180,000 for the insurance expenses on this portfolio. That's what the trailing 12 had on there as well. That's what the broker ended up using. But the broker who also partners with us internally here and sends deals our way because we can get them done very quickly. And so we pulled in the address information. We automatically actually scanned through with some character recognition, the offering memorandum, and within about 48 hours, we actually had a quote back to them for about $120,000. And so again, that was a quote then that broker can actually provide to their client as something that not only beats what the existing owner was paying, but you're also immediately creating that value on paper, right? At a 5.5 cap for this apartment portfolio, you've added about $1 million in portfolio value instantly just by saving about $70,000. And so there's some easy ways that you can do that and also provide wins as a broker to your client, and also ensure that as we've all talked about here, the worst thing that can happen in this space is that you've done all the work, you've gotten the LOI, you get to the finish line, and something delays that deal, and delays ultimately end up killing deals. And so if you can eliminate the barriers to that, that's the biggest piece. The other piece too, as well, that's important, especially for this crowd, is that we've also digitized all of the insurance tear sheets for all the major lenders out there throughout the United States. And so we know when we get a quote request in, we ask who your lender is. And so we know based on the type of asset it is, the purchase price, what it looks like, who the lender is, what those loan covenants are going to be. And so we're not going to end up getting you a quote that only has $1 million in general liability coverage when you need $5 million. We already know that. We don't want you to get to the finish line and then have to go back to the beginning of that process. All of this is streamlined through that. And for all of our partners, we end up making just a co-branded landing page. It's very easy for them to hand that out to their clients. And then they themselves get to be able to continue to add value just through the technology that we've built.
Sounds great. Making us more efficient.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, that's what we need. And then we can just focus on our pipelines.
Sure.
So Obie, how does your solution fit into the broader prop tech market?
Sure. So, when we built Dealius and as we've been growing over the years, we were very specific in the segment of the industry that we played in. Our product specifically serves as the system of record for a brokerage company, right? So we handle that entire process, as I've mentioned before. We're not getting into the marketing space. We're not getting into the other elements of what we do, but we kind of are the connection point between the front end transaction. So like as an example, where Matt with Occupier, they're directly connecting with the client, with the tenant. That's the front end side of the business. That's really not where Dealius plays, but it's a nice transition into Dealius, right? And with Obie, and so we have, by the way, everybody on this call is probably wondering, Obie's being mentioned a couple times here. So, we got Obie the guy and Obie the company. So Aaron at Obie and what his company is doing is connecting as well with a part of the transaction on the investment sales side that's creating value from the insurance risk standpoint. So each of our products play in a specific niche. And I think where we found our strength is pick a segment of the market that you understand, that you know well, stick to it, focus on it, because you're not going to be everything to everybody, right? That's just the world we live in. As much as there's this, utopian view that it's going to happen, nobody can be everything to everybody. That's our view of the business. And so we focused on the transaction side, the brokerage side, and being that core system or hub that every business needs to manage and grow. And that's where we sit.
Sounds great. All right, Aaron and Matt.
Yeah, I can jump in here quickly, and then Matt can share his thoughts. So, really just compounding what Obie said. I think the important thing in this space is really you're going to see a lot of collaboration amongst platforms. I think where there have been challenges in the prop tech space are people that really try to do too much for too many different stakeholders. And I think there's so much opportunity. There's so much greenfield that we can get out into. I think one of the things, and this also happens, on a deal by deal basis and just within this community, commercial real estate is obviously one of the largest asset classes in the world, but it's also relatively small and tight knit community. People know each other very well. And I think you're going to see that as well within prop tech. There are so many different segments of this market that a lot of these different systems can start to play nicely in the sandbox together, because it easily transitions you through that process. And the more that we on the prop tech side can continue to collaborate that, the more you'll see a very akin to the collaboration you see on the deal side of the commercial market as a whole. So, we generally fit into that space, as Obie said, and our customers are the same customers that Obie has, and generally the same customers that Matt has in one way or another. And so it creates this nice collaborative synergy within the space.
Yeah, our perspective on this is that, the term prop tech has really been around, call it since like 2011-ish, maybe 2012, when it started gaining traction. And what you saw was this realization that the asset class of commercial real estate is like a $15 to $20 trillion asset class globally. And venture capitalists and investors started looking at that as kind of the next frontier for investing in an industry that was going to change. And what evolved instantly was the term prop tech, but most of that money was focused on the physical side of the real estate industry. So the landlord side, we'll call it. Prop tech has, for the last 10 years, has pretty much focused on providing solutions for the property industry. That's why it's called prop tech, where we saw a huge opportunity is the tenant was largely overlooked in this whole situation, and therefore the tenant rep broker was too. So if you work at one of the big shops like CBRE, JLL, Cushman, Colliers, et cetera, you're probably getting inundated with corporate developed technology that is meant to basically kind of suck all the client data into the fold of the brokerage firm to keep those customers sticky, but they're not necessarily always the best solution. So the tenant rep broker was always kind of searching for these new tools, but because prop tech was so focused on the ownership side of the industry, they were largely forgotten. So when we emerged from VTS, we saw this massive demand for brokers to use good technology to do their job. And quite frankly, good technology before Occupier to do tenant rep deals just didn't exist. So where we fit into the landscape is bringing the proptech mindset to the other side of the deal, essentially. So again, I'll hammer on it again, but with COVID, we're going to be stepping into probably the most tenant favorable market within the last 25 years over the next 3 years. It's going to take 3 years for all these corporate tenants and these retailers to rebalance their portfolios and figure out what their workplace is going to be. So for us, this is a massive opportunity to provide really good software to help solve those problems. And at the end of the day, whether you're a real estate investor, operator, owner, the value of the property is the cash flow coming in from the tenant, whether it's apartments, hotels, arenas, or office buildings. The tenant actually creates the value in the property. So unless those tenants are armed and equipped with the right decision-making tools, they're completely left out to dry in the world of proptech. So, I mean, we named our company Occupier. So it's pretty indicative of like where we think the next wave of innovation is going.
Well, it'll be a very interesting next few years. So Aaron, what areas of innovation do you predict will become the norm, and why now?
Well, the why now is easy, and I think Matt's actually done a really good job covering this. I mean, obviously the prop tech space and just really software within the commercial real estate market has jumped considerably over the last 6 to 8 months. You've been forced into that position, and so I think ultimately, you know, where this space is going is a continued adoption of technology, and the more that these platforms continue to grow, the more that there's an opportunity for, you know, new feature sets that address new and more novel issues that our clients on a day-to-day are ultimately facing. I think, you know, technology in this space, it's very important that you start with one thing and you do it well and you prove to your clients how you're able to provide that value. But once they're in there, there's an opportunity then for each of us on our platforms to continue to find features that our customers are asking for. And how can we use the infrastructure that exists in there to continue to build out a product that adds a lot of value? Because ultimately, you know, the current work from home circumstances that we're facing, maybe some of us are finally back into an office, but certainly not around other people. You know, it's really forcing our hand to adopt a more digital first mindset to how we do business. And I think that's ultimately what's going to continue to drive innovation in this space and an advancement of new features and new tools that everybody can start to use.
I can piggyback off that if that's the route we're going here. I think anything that solves a pain point is going to be where the future of innovation goes. So from our perspective, we always get the questions of, are we disrupting the broker? Is this technology going to eventually replace the broker? You look at the residential market and platforms like Redfin, Zillow, et cetera. We would argue that those platforms enable the broker. They actually make the broker smarter, more efficient, and better. So if you look at Zillow as an example, I mean, they're light years ahead of what could be done in the commercial real estate space. You don't turn on the TV and flip over to HGTV and see people remodeling offices. I mean, I don't think it's going to get to the point where people are going to start loving the experience of moving an office. But all the pain points that exist in that process will have to be completely rethought. So when it comes to the broker, the ones that are going to survive are the ones that can adapt the quickest. And I think if you talk to any of the CEOs at the global publicly traded brokerage companies, they're looking at a future where their business is as much impacted by the technology that their constituents use than it is by just the expertise that the broker gains on the job. So if you're a 20-something-year-old a college graduate coming into this world and you want to be a broker, like the first thing you're going to ask yourself is like, okay, like where do I log on? It's not where's the phone book. It's not how do I become a member at a country club to get business. Like those things will all come, right? But the future is like in the technology that is going to provide like the virtual framework for people to actually do their jobs, and that has to solve specific pain points.
Yeah, and I'll chime in. So, we look at the current state of our industry and where it's going and why now is a combination of almost like this perfect storm. If you look at the demographics of our industry, it's an aging population, right? So, typically technology wasn't necessarily what was driving their business. They were very successful. They were able to build relationships, but with the advent of COVID and the pandemic, it's now created this need to adopt technology because your clients are no longer face to face with you, right? You now have to be applying technology to work more efficiently and take advantage of the same relationship through a different way of doing it, not necessarily changing the way you do it. So take that, couple that with kind of what's happening with COVID, and then you start to look at where is the industry going and how much of an impact is technology going to have on it. And the way that we're seeing it is, there's going to be a couple things that are going to happen. One, I think that data is going to drive pretty much everything we do, right? Everything we do is data driven, from investment returns to lease to working with lease rates and analysis and all those elements. So it's the ability for the end user, which is our customers for most of us here, which are the brokers, the ability to take that data and use it to their advantage, and the ability for technology to help them take that data and make it simple and easy so they can allow for the best results. The other side of this coin is that we're also seeing a generational shift of our clients where they're going to be much more tech savvy and require technology from us to be able to compete better and more effectively. So I think we're in for an interesting run. What COVID has done is accelerated the process. It's not that it wasn't going to get there. It was just a matter of when, not if. And now it's just like we're getting there faster. So, I mean, for us, it's exciting, right? Because we have to just get there and do it in a way that's more accelerated and make sure that our customers and the industry as a whole is able to take advantage of it because nobody's slowing down, right? Our customers aren't slowing down. The consumer's not slowing down. So we just have to stay with it and keep going and work as fast as we can to deliver the results that the industry is expecting of us and that we want to deliver. So
Sounds excellent. So Matt, is there any differentiation between your solution and the status quo?
Well, yes, I think the main differentiation between us and the status quo is that the status quo is all over the place. When you look at the world of software and workflow processes for a corporate real estate, retail real estate team, and a broker, we've already hit on the problems and the pain points, but there are just like too many things that are trying to do too many things. So when, if you're a lease administrator at a big company, for example, you might sign up for a lease administration software, but unbeknownst to you, your finance team may buy lease accounting software and they don't talk to each other. Worse yet, actually the lease accounting market, this is a stat, is only 5% penetrated by software. So the vast majority of companies out there globally probably still have their leases in like paper files in like a file cabinet or like on a desktop folder. So the status quo is really pretty pathetic, right? There's no actual workflow happening in that side of the industry. There's databases that exist that were developed in like the 80s, the early 90s, early 2000s that are still kind of clunking along, but nothing's connected. So where Occupier comes in is we're trying to connect all of those decision-making endpoints and on one source of truth for data. And that's typically your lease administration or your transaction management pipeline. And from there, then you're sucking in all the other stakeholders within the process. So you're moving from this like offline, disjointed, fragmented context into a command center view of the real estate side of your business. So just like you log in your computer every morning and you open up your Outlook or your Gmail, or you hop on LinkedIn, like there should be a tab open for your job if you're in a real estate department. That is where you do your work. If you're a broker, there should be a place where you're logging all of your deals and you're talking to all your clients. So the status quo for that is really just like spreadsheets, email, documents, and old school systems. I mean, we're a 2.5-year-old company. So we're building our tech based on the most up-to-date methods out there, which allow us to iterate faster and faster and faster to stay on the cutting edge of the technology. So we're moving faster than the status quo, replacing the status quo, which at the end of the day ultimately benefits the practitioners who are, trying to make more money.
Yeah, I can chime in. As far as Dealius goes, I think what we did when we came into the market, there wasn't really anything that, quite frankly, was status quo. It was really much Excel. Excel, Word. That's how pretty much everybody was managing their business, trying to figure out, your commissions on a transaction by, aggregating the lease value or the purchase price and taking your fees and all that. So what we saw was really that we are going to set the standard. And the standard, quite frankly, is not that we were looking to disrupt or change anything. It was really just a matter of taking something that is already in place in the way you do business and making it more efficient, right? And allowing the end user to realize that you don't have to be all over the place to manage your business on a day-to-day basis. Keep it simple, keep it easy to use, and make it something that people see value in using. And so for us, it was really just getting the industry to see that and understanding that there are better options and ways there to run and manage your business and manage your relationships, and doing so without having these clunky, outdated, very cumbersome platforms that, while they still get it done, take you, 2, 3, 4 times longer to do it. And so I think that's what really drove us, and that's why we currently are seeing ourselves kind of ahead of the pack. And quite frankly, we got in early. We're fortunate. 5 years ago is when we started our business. Technology like ours wasn't really around, and the ones that were doing it were Access database. So again, nothing really fancy. And we just said, the challenge, we heard ourselves and then our customers, and try to make it an efficient, simple, and easy to use system. And we're continuing to focus on that as we move forward.
Really on our front, just to kind of tie a bow on this, even it's interesting how much Obie and Matt even talk about their platforms and how the existing way of doing business is really based in Excel, right? And even in insurance process, even at loan companies, even at insurance carriers, I mean, it's still based within this system. And as Obie said, it's just very, very clunky. It doesn't talk to each other. It doesn't collaborate nicely. And while it gets the job done, it ultimately doesn't move the ball forward. It is still at its core the same system we were all using in 1995. But now it's just cloud-based, right? You can save that to the cloud, but it's still the same platform that we've all been accustomed to using. And I think that's what really sets all of us apart, because we've, as Obie said, I mean, we've all lived the challenges we have on a day-to-day basis. And so it's very easy once you start to see what technology can do, especially as you're collaborating across different platforms, to be able to then move this space forward and start to outpace what the incumbent has. No one wants to spend 2 or 3 weeks waiting for an insurance quote, especially for a small, relatively easy, to quote out building. I'm in a three-story office building here in Chicago. It's very straightforward. It's all brick construction. We got a quote back for the owner in about 48 hours, and his other broker took 3 weeks. And that's just because of the process that exists within that space, that it's still so manual. It's still so people-based and still so process-based, that technology today, finally, if you combine the tools that exist out there with also the expertise of people that have felt the pain points, if we know our own customers' pain points, it allows us to start addressing some of those in a way that just really haven't been able to do in the past.
It's an exciting future ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So Obie, how do you recommend an individual or firm evaluate technology for adapting to post-COVID life? Yeah,
great question. So, I think everybody is going to view and look at technology through different lenses. And my recommendation to all the individuals we speak to is, you've got to first understand your needs as a business and as an individual. Is what are you trying to solve for? And based on that, look for technology that allows you to do it in a way that's simple and easy to use. The bells and whistles aren't going to make you more money. It's really, at the end of the day, the transaction that gets you the ability to get you from point A to point B quicker and efficiently is what's going to drive results. Number one. Number two is, there isn't an end-all, be-all, all-in-one solution out there that's going to work for everybody. So the idea that we hear it all the time, well, I'd love to have A to Z done with this one solution. as much as we'd love to say that's there, it's really inefficient. It's not a realistic expectation because no one product can solve everybody's needs, which is why personally we're a big fan of collaboration and working with kind of best in class products, because that's the only way you can deliver the best result to your customer. So that's point number 2, is find what you want. Secondly, find it based on the best product that you need to solve your problem. And then number 3, it's really making sure that that product that you're looking at can scale, and it's not just kind of a short-term thing for you, right? Because the biggest thing we're seeing in the industry right now, and I think this is a learning curve from a lot of businesses, is having to change technology constantly, right? That's disruptive to the business. So our belief is that if we build a product and we build it right, just like the other 2 companies with Matt and Aaron, there's no reason for your customer to have changes if you're doing it right and you're focused on a specific segment of the market. Because what the trend I'm seeing in the last 2 years has been, people adopted technology early on thinking they were ahead of the curve, and they've changed it 3 times. So it's like you're not really making that much progress. So it takes time. It's not a simple decision, but when you find it, you do it right. I think the end result is you'll realize that you've made the best decision, and it's going to help your business grow and eventually lead to more income and hopefully profits for your overall enterprise.
I can jump in there too. I think I agree with everything Obie said, but I would add to it that even on the earlier end of it, really define what it is you're trying to solve for. Where I get frustrated as a salesperson and somebody who's trying to talk to customers is when we get engaged with a customer who, after some discovery, really doesn't understand or they haven't actually codified exactly what it is they're trying to solve for. So if you're a tenant rep broker, for example, like what is the North Star metric that you're shooting for your business? Is like, I want to do more deals. Okay. Like, solve that. How would you solve that problem? Well, you can hire an associate that's going to pound the phones and find more clients for you. How much does that cost? Okay. You can buy some marketing software to market your services to your customers better. Well, how much does that cost? I could buy Occupier to free up my time so that I could actually handle more workload, or software in general. So I think like when it comes down to making a proptech decision or any like software purchase, like you really have to put yourself in the buyer's journey to really understand like what it is that problem is that needs to be solved. And then like, what are the paths I can take in order to solve it? Sometimes software is not the right thing. Like we admittedly will work with a customer that potentially could have gone a different way. And it's not like we've failed them, but sometimes they're not as well defined in what they're looking for than they should be before they go out and start searching in the market. So we get a lot of inbound interest for our product, and sometimes it's not a fit because a company is just looking at all sorts of things. And if there's not a focus on solving a problem and that pathway has been defined, then it's going to be really hard for you to ultimately realize the ROI of any decision that you make. So I would completely take software off the table in your decision making. I would make sure that you're trying to solve for a pain point that is really acute and you're defining your goals. And then from there, identify like what the options are out in the marketplace.
Aaron, anything to add to that?
No, I mean, Obie and Matt did a great job on that. I think the only thing that I would add to that is, adding on to what Matt said is that, once you find that pain point, try out a couple of solutions, take the time to actually learn about them. It's very, very, very easy, even just outside of proptech. And I'm sure we all see this running a business on a day-to-day basis. There's so many solutions out there. And if you don't define what that problem is, you start to get solution fatigue, which gets you to a point where you've onboarded 10, 15% of the way onto 2 or 3 different things. And there's so much going on there that you push it all aside and you open Excel back up and you get back to the way you used to be doing it. So give yourself an opportunity to try and solve that one pain point, see what exists out there, try them out and give them a try, fix that one pain point, and then start to move on to something else. It's very easy to see the shiny websites and all the new solutions that exist out there. But once you get in there, it can be very complex. It can get overwhelming. And so what you want to do is just be very focused on what you're trying to solve for, and then go from there.
Thank you. So we're about to wrap up here at the end of our panel and our webinar. Got a question from the audience, and I think this is probably going to require more of some of the audience coming to visit you and your websites, but how about, they want to know, can you show any visual examples? How, if we have folks from the audience who want to see some of your technology, how would they go about doing that?
You can email me at matt@occupier.com, or you could head to our website, occupier.com, and request a demo. It's pretty simple. It'll automatically book you on one of our salesperson's calendar, and we're happy to walk you through the platform.
Same thing on our end as well. You can email me, Aaron, at obierisk.com, obierisk.com, or you can just go directly to the website as well. You can always request a quote there. You can request a way, and actually here's a great visual now of all of our contact information, but always happy to chat on whatever you're looking for.
Yeah, same with us. Our contact information is there, obie@dealius.com. You can reach us at dealius.com, and one of our team members will set something up so you can, see our product in action. So.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank our panelists today. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Obie, for taking the time out of your busy days. I hope the East Coast and Midwest and all the places that you are, keep warm out there. I want to thank our attendees. It was a great webinar. I learned a lot. I hope you did as well. And I also want to thank our sponsors, our CCIM sponsors and please, if you need some help that our sponsors can help you with, please reach out to them. Also, get involved. Visit our website at CCIM-WA.com. We have membership information, sponsorship information, and if you want to be on a committee, we'd love to have you. We are working virtually, so even if you're all over the state, we'd love to have you work with us. So please see our website at CCIM-WA.com. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day. We'll see you next time in November. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.